very much for the introduction on our amazing panel discussion today. I'm actually really excited about the panel discussion because we have got a really diverse range of experts on the stage today. So you know everyone from the introductions, but let me give you a little bit more information. I think together we have over 200 years of experience. No, okay. We have over 60 years of experience. No, we don't look that old. In the data center industry itself. Yash is obviously CEO of Nextra, and he was previously, you've got names like Illico, Tigo, Amazon Web Services under his plethora of experience. John, of course, has grown the Settlers business in this market from 1 to 250 people, all specializing in data centers. Then you have Rami, of course, who has incredibly over the last 5 years pivoted JLW to one of the key design and build contractors in the region. And of course, last but not least, Majid, who is a plethora of experience on the OEM vendor side, who's with Huawei Digital Power. So, I'm going to kick off the panel discussion. Obviously, we're talking about data centers. Let's start with how is the role of data centers and the associated infrastructure changing across the Gulf states and Africa in the region? As we know, data centers are becoming more critical with the coming in on policies like Cloud First, Saudi Vision, and UE Vision. We have a wide range of industries from finance, health, to smart cities, accelerating their digital services. So let's start with John. How about we talk about the evolution of the data centers and the role they're playing in the market today?
Thank you, Zedab. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the Graveyard Shift panel. We'll try and make it as interesting as possible for everyone. So yeah, if I look back through the 10 years and see how things have changed quite rapidly from the small enterprise data centers to where we are now with announcements of 100 megawatt plus projects, it's been quite transformational. One of the great things about here, specifically the UAE, is how the government has adopted new technologies. We started working with a client 5 years ago who had an idea to build a 100 megawatt campus, and 5 years ago I really scratched my head about that and thought, well, we'll help you on the project, but is there a case for it? That client is now one of the most prominent companies in the UAE deploying AI, so you can have a guess who they are. So to have that vision so early on, not just alongside cloud services, sovereignty of data, smart cities we all know about, but to be thinking about integrating AI into the day-to-day lives of healthcare, law, general operations of businesses at that early stage has been quite transformational, inspirational also. So we're seeing now that data centers are the fourth utility and have been for a number of years now, but more and more governments across the region are investing heavily into data, not just for sovereignty, but for AI deployment. There's definitely a race on in the region for that.
Thanks, John. Rami, maybe you can give your perspective from the contract side.
Yeah, look, I mean, John covered a lot of the points already, but just on his points, if you look in the last, say, 15 years, where contractors like us probably wouldn't have looked at data center the same way that we look at it now. Similarly with a lot of the supply chain. A lot of the supply chain that was looking at data centers at that stage have grown and they've become prosperous, but now you're looking at a much bigger supply chain, looking at this sector. So you can see contractors, even if you just compare it with the number of utilities now that are serving data centers, so power utilities, for example, how many are being built now to serve whatever it is that they were master planning before, which is residential, commercial, retail, whatever it was, versus the ones that are now serving that percentage that's been serving to data centers. It's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal growth. And it was phenomenal growth before the introduction of AI. So now with this introduction of AI, which kind of looks at the moment, like it's just leapfrogging to something that we don't know. We don't actually see where it's going. We can all forecast cloud services, but AI. So it's a very important market segment. Companies like us have gone from 20% critical facilities, 50% critical facilities over the last 5 years to now serving 90% of our projects are data centers and critical facilities. So it just shows you what we're looking at.
Thank you, Rami. Yash, maybe you can give your input into the Africa market, and having been in this market for a couple of years now.
Yeah, actually I've been in market even before. I used to work in Africa 2008 to 2015, 16 actually. Africa is a bit of a different story. I think Africa has always been kind of a market lagger when it comes to data centers. But it doesn't change the fact that data centers are now one of the pillars of a digital economy. And the beauty of Africa is that it has a critical mass population which drives the demand of digital services. And this in turn drives the need for infrastructure. So in my early days when I was in Amazon, when I saw the global map, we would see data centers everywhere except in Africa. And I really believe that the tide is changing a lot now, simply because the mature markets are running out of power, or we're finding innovative ways to create the new power capacity, but for their own use. And more governments are now looking at data sovereignty, looking at new ways to actually enable the population. And this applies a lot in Africa, that what we didn't see possible before, now we're seeing multi-megawatt of capacity being deployed in Africa. With its challenges, obviously, but also with opportunities. Like if you look at the announcement in Kenya, for example, the president announced gigawatt of thermal, or geothermal, I should say, energy which will power data centers. And I think there will be more and more collaboration across government in Africa to enable data center infrastructure, but also work in collaboration with UAE, with Africa, to actually deliver more and more of the services to the people in Africa.
Thank you, Yash. The demand is there, it's clear. Maybe we can go over to Majid to talk about the associated infrastructure changes that we're seeing in this market.
I can just agree with my colleagues. No, for me, if we would like to compare like Africa and GCC, I would say data centers are both evolving rapidly, right? But in a different way. I would say in GCC, data center is the backbone of digital transformation, which is driving by also the government. And if you take Saudi, you have the Saudi Vision 2030. Dubai, we saw also that kind of smart cities, and all is oriented to also, as I was discussing earlier about sustainability, to move on sustainable data centers. When it goes to Africa, yeah, there is also economic growth in data centers, but there is still a challenge of energy there. And I recall one discussion I had last week, somebody was telling me that in Africa, it's not only finding the right land with the right power, is if I take the land, where can I have green power available, I can produce green power. So I would say this is, for me, the comparison between GCC and Africa.
Thank you, Majid. Would the group like to weigh in on further developing this infrastructure story? Yash, I know we were speaking about this power issue that we're facing in the US and Europe, and that's why a lot of big players are coming into this market. Do you see?
Yeah, so pretty much the thinking process about how you look at deploying data centers has changed globally. Even when you look at the US, there's a lot of constrained regions. The technical term is constrained regions, actually, for having skills, because of the fact that they cannot deploy power in the next 3 to 5 years, which would satisfy the demand during that particular sector. So they have to think differently. You have latency sensitive workload, non-latency sensitive workload. So there's a lot of thinking process about how you actually move those non-latency sensitive workload away from these regions which are so constrained. Now, more than that, add the layer of data sovereignty, which makes it even more complex now, that you have to keep data closer to the country and closer to the people who are actually using it. This has created that kind of a different way of working, I would say, at a global level for region or the cloud demand. Couple of that, the AI boom came up. And this has changed even further the plan on where do we find this level of capacity, which is available near term to deliver AI workload. And that's not an easy question to solve. To this point a bit earlier about where we actually have enablers to get this kind of capacity delivered quicker, the right regulation, the right ecosystem, the right education framework. And this is where the likes of UAE is taking a bit of a head start by providing this kind of overall ecosystem to deliver.
Yeah, just to add to Yashin's point there, so a friend who's based in the US said to me about 6 months ago that roughly about 1.5 gigawatts of projects, data centers, got rejected over the last 12 months due to planning, power, environment, all these reasons. But that means they still need to go somewhere. Some might go to Europe, but we know that Europe, the flat D markets are also quite saturated. Again, we're seeing now tier 2 markets like Spain and Italy coming up, and also some of the stans as well, because they've got nuclear power, or Soviet nuclear power, which again is very good for data centers like Sustainable Loan. You see Microsoft have recently announced starting up a nuclear power facility, which was originally decommissioned in the US. So all of these loads need to go somewhere, and the UAE has welcomed with open arms, given that we have a very new distribution grid, new power plants. We also started nuclear power plants as well on the Saudi border, availability of land, and a government that is really proactive in welcoming the cloud giants, making it easy for the local operators, local co-location companies to deploy data centers across the country. So there is that, again, going back to that grab of AI workloads, and yeah, the governments here are making a good effort and making it very easy for the ecosystem to be part of that and to take those workloads on.
Thanks, John. Rami, I see you have something to say.
Yeah, look, just on John's point again, I mean, if you think what they need is power, what the industry needs is power, land. There's an abundance of land here, there's an abundance of power that we can generate here. And one of the main points is the regulation. Things happen, things get decided. If they get decided at the very top, they happen very quickly. So you can imagine trying to deploy the same thing in Europe, even in some of the Eastern European regions. Regulation will slow things down. So if you're looking at something coming to market quickly, this is the perfect region for it.
Thank you, Rami. I mean, so we've spoken a lot about the history and the current existence of the data center landscape. I'd like to take it across to trends, how we see the trends in each of your respective areas for the next, if we can say 5 years, can we say 5 years? Majid, maybe you'd like to weigh in a little bit on where you see the future going.
Well, that's a big topic, especially recently in Huawei. We have published the top 10 trends in data centers, but I would have loved to talk about AI in data centers, but I think maybe that would take a lot of session of panel discussion. So I would just say that what we have seen, we try to make it green, simple, smart, and reliable. That's mainly for summarizing top 10 trends. But one will be, again, I say green. So in terms of sustainability, and we can see here just in Dubai, we have done data centers, which is close to MBR Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, right? So we can see a trend where data center wants to be more and more net zero. You know, yes, some people will try and bring back saying, yeah, but we cannot all the time put solar everywhere or wind everywhere. But we can see these trends coming up more and more. So I would say in our region we have the sun, and we can explore different green energy. And this is one of the trends that we see as a vendor coming up.
Okay, Rami, would you like to weigh?
Trends, very, very open question there. Look, from a EPC perspective, like we said, we've sort of pivoted the company 5-6 years ago to concentrate on this market segment. It's grown, we've grown, and now we're predominantly looking at data centers. So for us, we just hope the trend increases, whatever people are forecasting. If 50% of it actually actuates, we're in a very good spot. So I think the trends in our sort of the EPC contractors, engineers and contractors, there'll be more players in this region. You have to have more players at the moment. I think there's probably not enough. We're in a unique position. Not that we want more players in our sector, but it's inevitable. So I just think it's going to grow. There's going to be more focus on it. There's going to be
sure.
Okay, John, how about if you give us your perspective in terms of the design trends that you see coming over, maybe UAE, Saudi as well, who are coming up and going to be the future leaders?
Okay, so yeah, we have to talk about AI when we talk about trends, but what that translates to for us as a consultant, also for an EPC contractor and as a product supplier, is that's high density loads. Now, on-chip cooling, immersion cooling, these technologies have been around for over 10 years. I can remember going to the show exhibits in London, conferences, and they would have all this technology. I think I even had a gaming PC which had on-chip cooling on it. So this is old technology, but we've just not had a requirement for it. Obviously, the chip manufacturers have now done the magic. NVIDIA, AMD, and other guys coming along now and really pushing up those densities where the air cooling is not enough, so we're having to move to liquid cooling. So there's a sudden rush of all of our clients, operators saying, you know, that data center we've got, can we make it AI ready? Can we adapt it? The answer is yes. I think I spoke at a previous conference that it's quite easy to do that, but you won't get the efficiency benefits from doing a retrofit, and it's also challenging in this climate with high ambient to get that efficiency. You know, Majid's talking about sustainability. You can do it. We've done projects, definitely parts of Africa. The climate is correct. We've done projects in India where we had full free cooling, no chillers, which meant for a 20 meg facility load, we could push around 17 megawatts to the IT. Whereas if that was in the Middle East, you only get probably 11 or 12 megawatts to the IT. So more IT load you can sell, more benefit for the likes of the operator, more dollars. So they're the main trends we're seeing, but also reducing space. Because now, say, 1,000 meter square data hall will typically have an equal amount of, say, grey space, that's UPS, generator, all the ancillary rooms for the power systems and cooling. Now that we've made that 1,000 meter squared white space 4 times the density, well, the generators they haven't advanced. The generators still generate a UPS, even though they've got a little bit smaller, they still take up a load of space. So now the challenge we have when we're designing for the operators and colo wholesale providers is that they like the data hall white space, that's what they can charge out. They can't charge out the UPS room to their clients. But because we've made it high density, suddenly all that back-end infrastructure has gone 3 times the size, but also operations cost has gone up because they've got more equipment to maintain, but the data center is still the same size it was 5 years ago. So that's a challenge for the operations team to worry about.
Yeah, that brings us on nicely to Yasser's perspective.
Yeah, thanks. I'll first start with giving more context from Airtel Africa perspective. So we are present across 14 markets. As a telecom group, we are very dominant in those markets. So 5 years down the line, what we really see is that those markets will transform themselves. We a much more established presence of data center infrastructure. Whether it's with us or with competition partners, it will be there. And it will be infrastructure which will be able to support a localized cloud adoption for markets. Where the beauty of Airtel Next Africa is that we as an ecosystem, we are able to support that development as a much more active player, being in the data center business, being in the connectivity business, and more importantly for our markets, being in the enterprise market. We're actually talking to all these major enterprises in the likes of Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, Madagascar, Seychelles. 14 markets is a lot. We are serving 150 million people today. We believe that the potential of having those people use more and more active cloud localized services will be a reality in 5 years. And infrastructure working the likes of John, hopefully that we can deliver that and we can make a success.
Do you think that Africa is ready in terms of the infrastructure support to be bringing in such a big network capacity?
Yeah, I think Africa has an opportunity because if you look at it globally, everybody is building power today. Before people were saying, oh, Africa has no power, I can say exactly the opposite. Most of the economies also have power. And today is that because of that need for each country to develop power infrastructure to support their own data center demand, you need to move workloads back to the markets where they are, which is Africa being one of them. So a lot of infrastructure being developed in Africa now, including power infrastructure, which will support those data centers, are now becoming a reality. I mean, the example is geothermal electricity production in Kenya.
Yeah, and there's a few other countries as well looking ahead. You just have to look at the broadband penetration happening across key countries in Africa, and also the investment in the subsea connectivity around the continent of Africa to know that there's a requirement for data and there's a lot of hungry users there waiting to get online, to run their small businesses. You've got M-Pay, originated in Kenya.
Yeah, Airtel Money.
Airtel Money as well, yeah. But people are monetizing their smartphones and running businesses from it. And people who would not have that opportunity to reach wider markets can now do it from a smartphone. We probably only use our smartphones for about a tenth of what they can do. There's a lot of smart people who I've seen in parts of Africa and India working that smartphone hard to earn money, which is more than we do on a bit of LinkedIn and a few Outlook emails. So.
Just to add on what you're saying, it's 1 billion people in Africa, most of them young generation, and who has a unique opportunity to jump the bandwagon directly to be having own digital businesses. And that's the kind of opportunity which we really foresee to happen in the next 5 years. We're going to see more and more localized digital services being developed by the local population, by the young generation, to serve the local market.
Majid, maybe you could give us your perspective from a vendor outlook. You talked about the trends in data centers, but in the infrastructure and technology, do you see huge advances?
Yeah, definitely. I would just continue what Yash and Jan was saying about Africa with the young people. That's great, but which means young also the level of expertise, and you agree, might not be the same in Africa with all respect, and we have also advanced in the region. So the way how we deploy data centers might be told differently. When I joined Huawei 2 years back, everybody was telling me, wow, Huawei built 100 megawatts in UAE, full prefab in a very short time. And no, we can see that. I would say when you talk about prefabricated data centers, because in some region, like even in China, we have done it in 6 months, full data centers. And in Africa, I would say that's still good because you have less expertise. So the prefab is scalable. That's good. Now, if you take it more in the GCC, we can see as a vendor moving more as a hybrid solution, where you can have your steel structures, precast, whatever you want, and we're going to use what we call powertrain. So you have your power module, for example, where you're going to deploy it, and you can have very short lead times. So the time we're talking, we executed 2 times 100 megawatt in Johor, in Malaysia, in around 9 months. So there is a trend which will be adapted definitely based on the region, which is different between Africa and GCCs. But yeah, at the end, faster you have to be, more you get faster. So
Yeah.
speed is important.
Thank you, Majid. You touched on the deployment and construction, which takes us nicely into our next question, Rami, about what differences you see in your 5 years in this industry.
Just to touch on the point, there's always a discussion about modular versus built to suit. Obviously, the skill set that you have within this country here, some of the advantages that we talk about for modular aren't the advantages, aren't the same weightage of advantage here in the UAE. Because the skill set here is very high. You've got very competent civil contractors, very competent MEP subcontractors. You've got very competent supply chain, and a wonderful port that everything gets delivered to here. You've got manufacturing, Jebel Ali, where we can put things together. So over here, we're taking advantage of that build to suit. So you get a client, whatever their plot of land, whatever they want to do with their white space, they'll bring in a consultant like John. They'll dream up a concept, and then we'll work together. If we're lucky to sort of bring that in, and it wouldn't be a plug and play modular solution. I'm not saying modular solutions are or containerized solutions are. There's no need of here in the UAE. There's some space constraints. I've seen people airports that work well in containerization. But in places where you don't have that skill set, in some rural parts in Africa, I guess they may be the only solution. You know, so just on that point. So what was your actual question?
Well, you touched a lot about it. It was about the construction and deployment trends that we're seeing in GCC, and then we can move to Africa as well.
So yeah, just on that point, especially now with the AI that's coming in and all this deployment, 100 megawatts and that's 1.3 gigawatts to be announced. All of them will be built to suit. All of them will have the best consultants, the best contractors all working together on it to sort of achieve what they're planning to do out there. And I think for that going back to the early question of the trends, there's going to be a lot of players in this market in that data centers for sure.
Thank you, Rami. John, do you want to weigh in on your perspective of how the construction and deployment is evolving?
Yeah, so just as Rami said, it's about a lot of speed to market because there is demand out there. There's no data center being built here in the UAE that's not already sold or leased out before it's built. So no one's doing the speculative, which means there's no capacity. A friend who works in industry for an AI company said to me, John, do you know anyone who's got a megawatt or half a megawatt I can deploy a cluster in? And I said, you'll need to go and buy one. There's no one's got any capacity. No one's got maybe 50 or 100 kilowatts. So that just shows you that being first to market and getting that capacity ready quickly will make sure you secure the work. But also that links back to the design. So as I was talking, that customers want something that's flexible. So it's AI ready. We've got some customers are big cloud giants. They want liquid cooling, but they're not sure. So the percentage of liquid cooling and air cooling. So we're designing the facility for 100% liquid cooling, but it might be 50% liquid, 50% air cooling. That's going to put up the price of the facility and also the size, because any time you want flexibility in design, that's an increased cost.
It costs money.
Cost, yeah. So either you want a car or you want a boat, but it's like saying, no, I want a car that goes on the water. We've all seen them by the JBR, the car boats. Now, it's not going to be that great at being a car, and it's not going to be that optimal at being a boat. It will do both okay, but touching back on the efficiencies and sustainability. So that's basically what you're asking for if you want something that can do both okay, but not fully. So that translates into increased lead time, increased costs of deployment. But the way AI high-density deployments are moving, even the cloud giants who are driving the industry, they're not sure. So if they're not sure, how are the mere mortals like us going to know what the right solution is? So by the time we've finished the design, before it's handed over to the contractor, something's already changed. NVIDIA announced a new GPU. Or do we go back to the drawing board and redesign, or does the client say, look, we'll just go on the previous generation because we've actually ordered the old chips, we need to make use of them. We're always trying to play catch up in the industry. Yeah.
It was my question to you, that how do you plan for this? Because it just sounds impossible. Within 3 months, the industry is changing, new technology is coming out, and you're talking to clients who, I'm assuming, want a 5-year, 10-year lasting project or a data center. So I don't.
Yeah, it's always on the RFP, 10-year design life for the data center, but it will be obsolete in 10 years. So what we can do is design build for now. No one has a crystal ball, unfortunately. So we have to work with the ecosystem, the cloud giants who are driving the industry, the chip manufacturers, do those lunch and learns, understand what the pipeline is. Then we can translate that into a design which has got some flexibility in. Halfway through construction, the contractor, which we all know has happened, has had to change things and put extra things in, which extends the project life, but has to be done to meet the requirements.
It just pushes out collaboration between all stakeholders. I know it's a buzzword that most industries say that they all collaborate, but in a sophisticated, let's say in a historical model of design, construct, operate, there are demarcations. in the data center world, because of this change, we're seeing massive collaboration where John, similar consultancies and some of those are drawn in very early in the stage. Sometimes a feasibility. We're drawn in much earlier than when they need to award the project. So there's a lot of collaboration. But on your point of forecasting, that was a question that I was asked by a few clients just recently as well. They said, what can we do to help you grow, right? Because there's this massive growth in the market for data centers. We're positioned at the moment to grow with that market, and you know, others will join, and others are also existing, they'll grow. They said, how can we help you grow? And I said, proper forecasting. Just give me a gut-shot forecast. And obviously that's impossible with what's happening in the data centers. But that was
But that forecasting links back to the ecosystem and the availability of the supplier, the contractor, the consultant, and even the operator as well. It's not just the UAE and Middle East that's busy with data centers. It's everywhere in the world. So everywhere is busy. It's not that we can say, oh, Europe's slowed down. We can import some talent people from there. We can bring over some contractors. No, everyone's flat out. So where are we going to get the people to help build, design, operate? You know, we're a few years away from the AI doing all of that. Everyone's trying to implement things to support the design and build process, but it's still at its infancy, its learning stage. So we still need people, engineers.
Yash, maybe you can give your perspective as an operator.
Yeah, so somebody mentioned forecasting, right? Even in my earlier days when I was a hyperscaler, I can say that forecasting is one of the most complex exercises which any company has to get into, especially when you talk cloud and you talk AI. So project design changing on the fly is nothing new. So if you guys haven't done it, means something is wrong.
I think we did 13 concepts for you on one project. But, yeah.
I've learned that developer forecasting is an art, not a science.
Yeah, that's a reality, you're right. But the reason is simply that as operators, we are also looking at like, our own needs. There's a lot of moving pieces as a business, which we need to factor in when we are getting into running our network, providing the best for our customers. And yet as a group, we have the unique advantage of being very close to a lot of what's happening in the world from a hyperscale perspective. And despite having those kind of knowledge on where the market is going, there's always a curveball which gets thrown in, right? I look at research, when we look at Africa, people say, oh, we need a gigawatt by 2030 across Africa. And that doesn't even include AI for now. And when you add that into the conversation, you have to turn to a gentleman to also say, how can you guys help us to make sure that we have a solution which is not only in theory it's okay, but we can actually be valuable. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have as operators is that even when you get a customer demand, you can be like, yeah, in theory it's great, a gigawatt, but then there's no power. This guy cannot do it. But GC is already tapped out. There's not enough people in the market to actually build and deliver. So you have to work much more closely, I agree. But customer, at least for me as an operator, I am very clear in my mind that changes will happen. We need to be pragmatic about it. We need to talk about it, but we cannot be fixated in, yeah, you guys need to make it happen, whatever, you know, was said.
Yeah.
And you know, if you allow me, I had a case where we had a center, we had to increase 30% of the power, and also as a vendors to have some, how would you say, Lego concept, like you have the modular UPSs that are going to, but technically, or the fan walls, we have kind of fan walls which if you move from 110 to 220, you can just put it together. So as a vendor, we can also, we cannot put the wall for sure, but this is also, as Rami said, we have to collaborate all together from the vendor to the consultant or the chain.
Okay, I think we've only got a couple of minutes left before not over the panel. I was very curious. We talk a lot about AI, and since we've we've got you guys and you're such a diverse, everyone has a little part in the different industry. I want to ask how AI is impacting your businesses, if it is at this point in time. Yeah, shall we start with you?
Yeah, I think this is a very complicated question, by the way.
You got 30
I
seconds.
think everybody wants to find a way to be AI ready or what we think will be users of AI. But AI as a concept is still being built. It's still being, I think, mainstream for American markets, European markets, but for Africa, we're still a thinking process on how we would actually be able to maximize the use of AI, and still a work in progress for us on how we would be able to leverage that. But that's more from a, I would say, end customer perspective, but there's a lot of work which the team are really doing to make use of that technology in how we run.
Okay, John, you're not allowed to say ChatGPT.
Okay, so there's the funny answer, which is as soon as ChatGPT came out, we had a flood of very well-written emails from staff asking for justifying their pay rises straight out of ChatGPT. So, but the more technical answer to what we're doing is, firstly, we're looking at it from our BIM and Revit team, because that's somewhere that we can implement it to simplify, speed up the design process, which we're already working in a 3D space with a lot of different plugins, so I won't get into too much technicalities, but that's one key area that we're looking at. And then also into the operations of facilities, mean time before failure and repair, inputting all that data. We're still seeing what the best solutions are for that, to then recommend that to our clients, because there's a lot of different platforms out there, but the industry hasn't really settled on one to get the best out of it. There's lots of vendor-centric ones, not one that's a whole market platform. And facilities now are multi-vendor, just by the requirement of lead times, and also customers doesn't want to put all the eggs in one basket. So I think for us it's on the design side and in the operation of the facility is where we're going to see the biggest benefit, and over the coming years when the models have developed into something that's more usable for us.
Oh, really interesting. Rami, from your perspective, maybe as a business owner as well, you can give your input how you're seeing the efficiencies improve.
Yeah, so typically construction's always been the dinosaur when it comes to implementing technology out of all the industries. But as a business owner and as a contractor with this kind of a design base, we have seen efficiencies within our organisation, especially I'd say in that below mid-level management, repetitive task area. So most of it is overhead that we're seeing a lot of efficiencies. So we've got more senior staff that are able to multitask as opposed to multi-delegate and check. That's what we've seen as a contractor. Obviously, John was bang on with the design. There's a lot of tools that we're using with the design as well, and the implementation of shop drawings, which is good, less errors. And we're actually procuring from the model these days. We trust our model to the point that we're procuring from it doing takeoffs, which is good. We haven't delved into the world of operations yet of DCs or similar critical facilities, but I can bet that if we do, we will be. There's a lot of advantage in using some of the AI technologies for that. That would be that will just reduce the human error.
Thank you, Rami. Majid, are you seeing a lot of AI being used by Huawei or other technologies?
Well, I think I will be short because I saw a couple of cases. We had a topic about the AI panel, especially. If I open the topic, maybe I get question back. But I want to say we always talk about why the impact of AI in data centers. My colleague already explained. I will take the question in different angles. How AI can contribute also in data centers, because we talk also about AI, and as a vendors, we use machine learning since few years. For example, we have like called IEEE, iPower, iCooling, and iManagement. What I mean is like iPower, we're gonna do predictive maintenance, not preventive. We're gonna predict when it's time to replace the components. So this will have on the OPEX side, not CAPEX, but OPEX, to save money. On the iCooling, you will be able to adapt the cooling from data or itself by collecting a lot of the data and send from the management. So definitely in the vendor side, you have the impact of AI data centers, but we also have the AI used to develop data centers.
Thank you, Majid. I don't know if we have time for questions.
Maybe ask.
Any questions
You
do
can
we
take
have?
maybe 2 questions. quick
Two
ones.
questions? No? You've left them speechless, gentlemen.
Very good.
Yeah, it's Thursday.
It's just, they have nothing more to ask. Okay, then I'll wrap up the topic. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for your thoughts. And thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.